stories. 15 minutes, a little short, a little over. Start story. What's that?
Well,
We're gonna do a little assistant presentation.
I got Okay. I won't. Yeah. I don't think I have any clients. Some of them. You know, I think I'm going to do that. I just do my professional.
Yes, but I.
Kind of like.
We're getting about a minute.
It shows you what the piece is supposed to look like. There's two different sets. I got it. Show you one. We cut it out, lay it on the floor, finish around, and which gives you the shape of the. Yeah, that sheet of paper will 76 size, and the rest of the all half by the rest. That font, 8.5, whatever, tell you.
Not young.
Hey. All I have to do is walk on stage.
Yeah.
So we're gonna cut the music here in just a minute. We'll get started, I'm pretty sure. But thank you all for turning out tonight. Wasn't this a fantastic day?
Yeah.
Were people outside today? We outside the other
Yeah.
side? It was like, it's a perfect day to do anything really outdoors. So, well, before I get us going, I'd like to introduce the person on my left. This is Joyce Ellinger. So I can kind of see you, the lights are pretty bright, but I want to put my hand up and take a quick peek. How many people have been coming to our shows for a while? Let's show of hands. Okay, several have, and lots of you have maybe never been to a storytelling show, would that be correct? Yeah, okay, thank you all for coming tonight, that's great. Joyce is signing for the hearing impaired. And Joyce has been practicing this, so I think she's starting to get pretty good. She's only been doing this with us since about 1990. So I think she's gonna pick it up pretty soon now. My name is Bob Sander, and I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Storytelling Arts, which we started, believe it or not, I think we incorporated in 1987.
Wow.
So we've been doing this for a while now, and this event that you're at tonight has been a lot of different places.
Yeah.
It was at the old Irvington Theater. And on a proscenium kind of like this in front of the old screen there, when that was still a working theater. We told the very first ghost tales at our very first Hoosier Storytelling Festival in 1988. And the kind of celebrity guest to come and tell stories that night was then Mayor Bill Hudnut. Bill Hudnut never met a microphone or a camera that he didn't like. And you don't want to get between Bill Hudnut and either of those things. So, Bill Hudnut, well, I called the mayor's aide some months in advance of the storytelling festival and said, we'd like to invite the mayor to come and tell at our inaugural event. Do you think the mayor would like to come? Well, we'll get back to you. So I said, well, we need to know by such and such a date, because we're arranging the venue for that night. And 3 weeks before, I said, does the mayor want to come? Well, we'll get back to you. He's a busy man, never know what's gonna pop up. So you know what that meant? We're like, well, if nothing else is going on. So this went on until it was 2 days before the festival. And then they called and said, all right, the mayor's gonna come. Great. Then they call back. The mayor's gonna come, but he wants to know, what should he tell?
Oh, no.
I don't know. It's ghost tales. Does he know a spooky story? Okay, we'll find out. So, they call back 4 times during that day. What should the mayor tell? Now I'm thinking, does he know a ghost story? No. So, then it was the day of the event. And everything just has to unfold now, mayor or no mayor. And they call back and said, the mayor wants to know, what should he tell? I said, all I can tell you is what I told you before. Does he know? How about something like the House of Blue Lights?
Oh.
Does anybody here know that story? Yeah, that's a local Indianapolis piece of kind of true life happenings, plus, it's been built up in the way that urban folklore does. So they called back and said, the mayor will tell that. So I'm thinking, well, what's gonna happen? He showed up. He told a version of the House of Blue Lights that was maybe the best I've ever heard. And he included details that I had never heard. So he was a wonderful kid. We've also been way down behind the Indianapolis Museum of Art, where there's the tiered areas back there where they show movies in the winter. We've been for many years in Crown Hill Cemetery.
Yeah.
Those were great years. And then over in Military Park, close by. But let me just say, we're happy to be here. This is a great place to be. It's fun to be together, share some of these stories that kind of, in feeling wise, takes you back to maybe when you were a kid and hanging out in a dark room with other people. Maybe you didn't know some of them very well. Anyway, so I think I got the high sign to get us started here tonight. So I want to thank a few people. Lewis and Kappas, the legal firm, has sponsored tonight's event, so we want to give them a round of applause. Well, there's no intermission tonight, so we're going to go straight through. So I'll just introduce the storytellers one after another. I do want to let you know that we host story slams where you can come and there'll be a theme. Might be 2 or 3 storytellers there that have been asked to come, but then anybody else can put your name in the hat, hop up there on stage and tell a story if you have something for that topic. And you will win a cash prize. Maybe. You will be judged. So the next one is this Wednesday, and it's at the Aristocrat up on College. Starts at 7 o'clock, so you can get a meal, get something to drink, and listen to storytelling. You don't have to tell, but you can tell if you'd like. Frank Basile, a great supporter of the arts here in Indianapolis and many other things, sponsors an annual Emerging Stories. So if your proposal is picked, and really nobody else in the country that I know of does this, you get a grant funded year to create a story of your choosing on anything that you want. So it's a great event, it's a great challenge for storytellers. That is happening on November the 9th, and that will be at the Indiana Historical Society. Trying to read my really quickly penned notes. It's almost illegible here. The Once Upon a Time Storytelling Circle where you can get together with other people who are interested in learning to tell folk tales. Will happen on October the 26th at the Hamilton East Library at 2:30. And all these things that I'm telling you about, if you go to our storytellingarts.org website, you can see everything that we're doing all during the entire year. These are just the upcoming events. That's about enough of me talking, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let me bring up our first storyteller to get us started with me again. Yay. So, this gentleman has been a storyteller at least since 1990 that he will admit to. Could have happened earlier than that. I know in my life, my parents said you started telling at a very early age, but that was not always appreciated. I think maybe David's on a similar track. I mean, he has performed at festivals really around the country. He won the 2016 Liars Contest at the Indiana State Fair. No, that's what it says here. But after reading that, don't you kind of have to ask yourself, is that a lie? He's graced our stage for a lot of shows over the years, such as The Oracle of Delphi, A Grand History of the Delphi Opera House. And that is a story that we storytellers should get assigned a building that's been designated by the Landmarks of Indiana as the best historical reconstruction for that year. And we storytellers are challenged to figure out how can you make a story out of the history of that building and what it was and what it's become. So it's a tough go, but David did a brilliant, brilliant job at that. He's been a teller at the Ghost Stories, I think, since back in 2015. He has a degree and is indeed a veterinarian. He's currently the director of the physiology teaching labs at IU Bloomington. And he's here, and he has a good story for you. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Let's applaud and bring David right up to the stage. Here we go.
Thank you. I just have to put a word in for one of those other Indiana Landmark Cook Cup winners I did a story for. Purdue Polytech. I see they just got all their federal funding cut. Yeah, that's a shame. It was a wonderful program. I hope local funding, including maybe you all, can chip in and help that, because it was doing an amazing job with folks. And it was the old PR Mallory factory, if you know what that is. Yeah. But anyway, so I kind of cut my teeth on storytelling and veterinary practice in Central Florida, in the wilds of the Ocala National Forest. And now the Ocala National Forest, it's the largest contiguous national forest east of the Mississippi. And yet a lot of people live within the boundaries of the forest because it's dotted with lakes. And the Forest Service leases the land around the lakes on a 99-year lease for homesteads. And so a lot of folks live out there, and the forest attracts a lot of folks of different flavors, all right? There's a lot of folks move to the forest just to get away from society. There's a lot of recluses, some criminals. Ma Barker and her family, the Ma Barker gang, will the Ma Barker shootout is held this time of year in Ocklawaha, a reenactment there at the edge of the forest. So it attracts all types, including some really wonderful types. So we bought a house there at the edge of the lake, and when we first moved in, the house over here was empty, but over here, our neighbors, Stan and Betty, they were some of the wonderful people attracted to the National Forest. Stan was captain of the Miami-Dade Fire District for much of his life, and he toiled as a firefighter, and he always dreamed of retiring and moving to the country. So that's what they did. And if this doesn't say country, it at least whispers country. You know those tall metal antique milk cans? Yeah. Well, have you seen them with an old metal John Deere tractor seat welded on the top. So you can use it as a stool. Yeah, that says country. But if you really want to go country and stand it, you need to raise some livestock. All right, so he started out small, chickens. All right, and he built the most amazing chicken coop. We would joke with him that it should be featured in Better Coops and Gardens. It was fantastic. It was timber frame construction, cypress siding, cypress shingles, glass windows, a wooden door with glass windows. Betty made some calico curtains. It was beautiful, and a fortress of a chicken yard, which would be a good idea in the middle of the national forest. Lots of critters there were wanting those chickens, but it was magnificent. And evidently those hens were quite happy because at least once a week, Stan or Betty would trot over with a dozen fresh eggs. It was wonderful, worked out very well for us. Well, one day, Betty came over with some eggs and she said, "Have you met your new neighbor yet?"
By David Nichols, the 2011 film starring Anne Hathaway and Jim Sturgis.
Did we remind storytellers to turn their phones off?
I'm trying to cut it off.
I've been there lots of times. So she said, "Well, have you met your new neighbor?" I said, I wasn't even aware of anyone moving in. She said, "Very secret, very standoffish. I cornered him up here at the mailboxes. I told him all about Stan and I and you and your wife and Forest Veterinary Clinic. I couldn't even get a name out of him. Very secretive, very standoffish. See what you can find out." I said, "Okay." I never quite got around to it, but I would eventually meet him about a week later. I came home from work, got out of my car. There was a little rustling in the hedgerow between our houses there. And I saw this gaunt face staring at me. He said, "Doc, she's been killing again. She needs a distemper shot." I said, "Beg your pardon?" He said, "The cat. She's in a real bad temper. She's killing again. She needs her shot." Well, I didn't bother to explain that distemper doesn't really mean they're in a bad temper and they're gonna. But I figured the cat in the national forest needing shots, I was gonna do everything I could to get her shots. So I said, "Well, tomorrow call the office, Forest Veterinary Clinic, make an appointment, bring her in. We'll get it taken care of." He said, "I don't know if I can catch her, Doc. And I don't think you want her coming into your clinic. She's mean as a snake." I said, "Okay, I'll bring the shots home. And if you catch her, come on over and we'll get it done." And so we agreed. Well, a couple nights later, I had brought the vaccines home. There was a knock on the door. "I got her, Doc." So I went over into the little kitchen. There were still boxes there that had not been unpacked. No missives around anywhere that I could see. And I explained, "Well, now I need to give a rabies shot. And for that, I need a name. I need your name and the pet's name." He was Mr. Jacques Thibodeau, and the cat was Mildred. Well, then we went back to the Florida room. Now, every house in Florida, especially on the lakes, the back patio is screened in, and it's called a Florida room. Now, if you have a screened-in patio, you can start calling it a Florida room. You don't live in Florida. All right, but every house had a Florida room. So we go back to see the patient, and it was a big animal crate. And in that crate was the biggest, blackest, meanest she-cat I had ever seen. I mean, she was enormous. It might have been a Black Panther. I couldn't be sure. Really big and mean as a snake. She was hissing and yowling at me. I said, "Okay." And I drew up the shots and he said, "Doc, I'm afraid to take her out. She'll shred me to pieces." And I looked and I said, "Well, I believe I can get the job done." She was so big that her muscular haunches were kind of pooching out through the slats of the crate. And so I leaned down and just drew up the other set around to the other side. And then I hightailed it on home. Well, the next week, Betty comes over and she said, I'm sorry, but there's only 8 eggs. Stan lost a chicken. Then the next week, Stan came over with only 6 eggs. He said, I lost another chicken. And he said, Doc, I can't figure it out. There is no sign of breaking and entering. I don't know what kind of creature is stealing these chickens. I'll go in the morning and the other hens will be all upset and there'll be a little poof of feathers on the floor. 1 chicken less, no sign of breaking and entering. And he decided that he would have to spend the night in the chicken coop to see what was doing this. So he got his milk can, John Deere tractor seat, stool, set it in one corner, his shotgun, and sat in there the entire night. Now, he might have nodded off, but nothing happened. Second night, he might have nodded off, nothing happened. Third night, he did nod off, but something awoke him. He woke up to see the doorknob slowly turning. And he looked, and the moonlight was filtering through Betty's calico curtains with the shadowy figure of a human being. And Stan thought, well, now what kind of feller would steal a guy's chickens? And he was about to confront this individual when that shadowy figure slunk down out of sight. And then he watched in amazement as that door opened and an enormous black paw reached in. Wham! Well, that gunshot and that yowling woke me up. I bolted up, looked out in the moonlight. I saw a big black 3-legged she-cat running from Stan's chicken coop over to the Thibodeau's. Well, I knew what had happened. I threw my clothes on, ran over to Stan's chicken coop and said, I don't think she'll be back, Doc. I got her, or at least a part of her. And he shined a flashlight on the floor of that coop, and there was a big black cat's paw. He said, well, I reckon I'll throw it in the lake and let the gators eat it. And now the biohazard safety officer in me stepped forward. I said, well, Stan, I'm obliged to dispose of that as biohazardous material. The state of Florida had just enacted a series of legislations making all animal parts considered potentially biohazardous. And now veterinarians had to dispose of any animal part with established statutes. All right, so, which involved hiring a state-approved incineration company to come get your body parts. And veterinary clinics generate a lot of body parts, mostly spays and neuters, but the occasional amputation. Don't ever let your kid or grandkid put a tight rubber band on a cat's tail. All right, it will get gangrene and it will need to be amputated. All right, so we generated so many body parts that we actually had to buy a big freezer chest. And we had to build a shed out in back of the clinic to have room for the freezer chest. But I felt obliged to follow state law and explain that to him. And he had a beautiful little hutch in the other corner. And he opened a drawer and he had Ziploc bags and latex exam gloves. So I gloved up and picked up the cat's paw, put it in a freezer bag. I went on home. Now, it was almost dawn, wasn't worth going back to bed. So I made myself some coffee, and as I did, I noticed something going on over at the Thibodeau's. I saw Mr. Thibodeau escorting what I assumed was Mrs. Thibodeau. I'd never seen her before, but he was escorting her to the car, and she was all hunched over. Well, he opened that front car door and scooted her into the car. He jumped into the driver's side, and spinning sand, he peeled out of there. Well, I showered, went to the clinic, put the cat's paw in the tissue freezer, and forgot all about it. But I did not forget about the Thibodeaux. I was so curious about them and all of these goings on. Well, a couple of weeks later, I come to work and it was time for the state-approved incineration company to come get all of the occupants of our freezer chest. And Elena, our technician, now Elena was a tough technician. She's the one that I would call for the Rottweilers, the pit bulls, and worst of all, the Chihuahuas.
Oh, yeah.
So she was tough, all right? Well, I poked my head, good morning, into the shed. And Elena was slumped over the freezer, shaking, almost sobbing. All of the color from her cheeks had drained out. I said, Elena, what's wrong? And then trembling, she held up that freezer bag. What is this? And I looked, and there in that freezer bag was a human hand. Did that really happen to me? Well, if it didn't, it should have, because that would have been really cool. That is my version of a very old folktale, The Cat's Paw. Thank you.
Thanks, David. You know, my dad's sister, my aunt, lived in Miami. So we made lots of trips to Florida when I was a kid on up until my adult years. And I just wonder if what you said holds any water at all. I remember going to roadside stands and, buddy, there was every animal part you could think of for sale. Gator paws and gator heads and, you know, kind of half open like that. And so anyway, what a great delivery. I love that story, David. Thanks for sharing that with us. So Jos Holman, our next storyteller, lives in Lafayette. So he did some traveling and we are always grateful when Jos hops in his car and makes the drive down here to Indianapolis to kind of tickle our fancy with his approach to storytelling. He always brings really a lot of enthusiasm and energy to whatever he does, as you will see here directly. Something I witnessed the last time, I think, probably was when Josh was doing one of those, if these walls could tell stories about the resurrection of the Elkhart Hotel. That's probably the last time I saw you work, I imagine, right?
Yes.
Yes, here in Indianapolis. Brilliant story, well-researched, beautiful delivery. He's pretty much an expert on all things multicultural and folktales from around the world. And it'll be interesting to see how he is going to use those skills to, let's just be honest, scare the crap out of us tonight if he kills. Are you ready to come up and give us a few chills? Here's your round of
A teeny tiny ghost, no bigger than a mouse at most, lived in a great big house. It's hard to haunt a great big house when you're a teeny tiny ghost, no bigger than a mouse at most. He did what he could do. So every dark and stormy night, the kind that shakes a house with fright, if you stand still and listen right, you'll hear a teeny tiny boo. That's a poem by Lillian Moore. My name is Josh Holman, and I want to tell you a story tonight, and I need to put this disclaimer in, Bob. It is not a scary story. Ronan and I had talked, and mentioned the idea of maybe some younger folks being here and finding something that may be spooky, but not scary to the wall scary. So that's what I'm doing. So, I want to tell you a story about a girl. A girl that someone might describe as misbehaving, naughty, maybe even mischievous. So not the type of girl that you would necessarily expect a young girl to be. And the story also includes her family. And the story includes a creature. A creature that maybe you might think of as a witch, or maybe a sorceress, or maybe just an old hag. The mischievous girl and the hideous creature. This is a story or adaptation by Beth Horner. One night, a young girl was doing what she loved doing more than anything else in the world. And that was scaring her younger brother to death. Yeah, that's right. She loved to scare her younger brother to death because he annoyed her. Every night, right after dinner, he would run to the living room and plop himself down right in front of the television set so that his big head covered the entire screen. No one else could see anything. Well, no matter how politely she asked, hey, little brother, would you scoot over to, or no matter how rudely she threatened, now you listen to me, look, pipsqueak, if you don't give her enough, he would not move his big head. Yeah, he annoyed her. So when he was concentrating intently on his favorite television program, she loved to sneak, S-N-E-A-K, up behind him and shout, "Ooh," and watch him hit the ceiling. Oh, she loved to do that. Well, one night when she had caused him to hit the ceiling about 12 or 13 times, her younger brother, he went to bed. Oh, and by the way, she had an older brother, and he went to bed. Her parents went to bed, and then she went to bed. She was in her room, all by herself, in the dark, when she heard a tap, 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 tap on her window. She went over to the window. She looked outside her window, and on the other side of the window was a hideous looking creature. It had long, white hair. It had two long noses, and on each nose there was a gross wart. And on each wart there was a long, greasy hair. The creature looked at the girl through the window, reached out and opened up the window and said, "Do you know what I do with my long red fingernails and my big red lips?" "No," said the girl, "and I don't want to know." And she slammed down the window, jumped under her bed, and that's where she stayed all night. Well, the next day, the girl, she forgot all about the creature. She went to school, and she was too busy at school to think about the creature. She was too busy after school to think about the creature. And really, she was too busy at home to think about the creature until she remembered the second thing that she loved to do more than anything else. And that was make her older brother sick to his stomach at the dinner table. Yeah, that's right. She loved to make her older brother sick to his stomach at the dinner table because he annoyed her. He would tease her and pick on her and tease her and pick on her and tease her yeah, he annoyed her. Well, that night they were having peas for dinner. And so when her parents stepped out of the dining room and went into the kitchen, she grabbed a handful of peas and she stuffed them into her mouth. And she started to chew and chew and CHEW those peas into a green gloppy mess. Not runny, just a green gloppy, gooey, repulsive mess. Then she tapped her brother on the shoulder. And we turned around and said, yeah, what do you want, you pipsqueak? She opened her mouth wide and did this. And showed him that green, gooey, gloppy, repulsive mess. He heaved and then he ran into the bathroom with his mouth covered just in time. Oh yeah, she loved to make her brother sick to his stomach at the dinner table. Well, after a while, her older brother, he went to bed. Her younger brother, he went to bed. Her parents went to bed, and she went to bed. She was in her room, all by herself, in the dark, when she heard a window. She went over to the window. She looked outside the window, and on the other side of the window was a hideous-looking creature. It had long, white hair. It had two long noses, and on the end of each nose was a gross wart. And on the end of each wart was a long, greasy piece of hair. The creature looked at the girl through the window, reached out and opened up the window and said, do you know what I do with my long red fingernails and my big red lips? No, said the girl, and I thought I told you last night. I don't want to know. And she slammed that window down tight, and she jumped up in her bed, and that's where she stayed all night long. Well, the next day, she did not forget about the creature. She was uncharacteristically quiet at school. She was uncharacteristically quiet after school. She was uncharacteristically quiet at the dinner table until she thought of one more thing that she loved to do more than anything else, and that's trick her parents into saying something impolite at the dinner table and then getting money from them when they did it. So she turned to her parents and she said, I'll bet you $1 that I can make you say something impolite at the dinner table. Her parents said, oh, well, no, that's impossible. We always speak so politely at our dinner table. The girl said, but I bet I can make you do it. I bet $1 I can make you say something impolite right now. Parents were so sweet about it. They said, that's ridiculous. We would never say anything impolite to you right now. Well, I'll bet you, and I'll bet you. The parents said, oh, okay. Just makes you feel better. We'll take that bet. $1, said the girl. The parents said, okay. Okay. The girl said, I have a riddle. Answer my riddle. Pete and Repeat were sitting on the fence. Pete fell off. Who was left? Parents thought about it for a minute. Repeat. Okay. Pete and Repeat were sitting on the fence. Pete fell off. Who was left? Repeat. Okay. Now, Pete and Repeat were sitting on the fence. Pete fell off. Shut up, the parents suddenly said. And then they realized they had said something impolite. Oops. We're sorry. And the parents slowly reached into their pocket and they gave the girl $1. Oh, she loved tricking her parents into giving her money. Well, after a while, the parents, they went to bed. Her older brother, he went to bed. Her younger brother, he went to bed. And she went to bed. She was in her room all by herself in the dark. When she heard on the window, she went over to the window. She looked outside the window. And on the other side of the window was a hideous looking creature. It had long, wild hair. And it had 2 long noses. And it had, on each nose, there was a gross wart. And at the end of each wart, there was a long, greasy piece of hair. The creature looked at the girl through the window, reached out and opened up the window and said to the girl, do you know what I do with my long red fingernails and my big red lips? What? Said the girl. The creature was beginning to annoy the girl. She continued, every night you come here and you ask me this same ridiculous question. Do I know what you do with your long red fingernails and your big red lips? I don't know. I don't know. And I don't care. So you answer the question. You tell me, what do you do with your long red fingernails and your big red lips? The creature smiled at her hideously and reached out with one of its long red fingernails and reached toward its big red lips. And it went. And that's the end of the story. The young girl and the chickens. It is just a story. I have given it to you. Pass it on.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
That was good.
Sometimes be sure and look over at Joyce,
Yeah.
just to see how she handles what she's been given. I missed that. Did you, but you probably did.
Yeah.
Okay, well, our next storyteller, Leondra Radford. We have such a multi-talented cast of storytellers here tonight. It's quite amazing, actually. Leondra is an educator. She is a published researcher. She is an activist for student rights. She is an actor who's been in many plays here in Indianapolis. And importantly, for us. She's a wonderful storyteller. Also currently still as board president of Storytelling Arts. That's worth a round of applause right there. So, I've heard Leondra tell several times now, I know we're in for a treat. She is, also a globetrotter by her own account. She's only been to 6 continents. So there's a 7th one, one of the colder ones waiting for her someday. And she regularly participates in our story slams. I was telling you about that earlier tonight, and places, maybe wins sometimes as well. Additionally, keeping on the same track, she is a playwright and a poet and a director at an alternative school. That's a lot of irons in the fire, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But tonight she has it in mind to maybe scare the jabbers out of you. So we're very pleased to welcome her to our stage, Leondra Radford.
Thank you. All right, so tonight I have crafted a story for you that maybe I'll share a little bit at the end so it doesn't ruin the beginning and the middle and the end. Okay, 1991. Will Turner had gotten off from work late. He was driving home in the middle of a rainstorm. It was dark. The weather was chilling to the bone. And he come to a stoplight. And when he got to the stoplight, just out of the right corner of his eye, he saw a woman standing at the bus stop without an umbrella, without a coat, and appearing to be chilled to the bone. He looked through the rain so intently, trying to see this woman, and he said, no, could it be? This woman was the most beautiful woman that his soul had ever seen. And so quickly he rolled down his window and he yelled out, "Are you headed to the quarters?" And the woman looked and said, why, yes, I am. And he said, well, come on, I'll give you a ride. And so the woman had been holding unsuccessfully a newspaper over her head, trying to keep the rain from ruining her hair. She shook the newspaper off, tossed it, quickly jumped into his car, wiped off her skirt, wiped the rain off of her face, and turned to him and said, "Thank you for rescuing these old bones. I'm Nola Williams." He looked over at Nola and he said, "Nola, it is so good to finally meet you." And about that time, the light turned green, so he started to drive home. And on the ride home, he invited Nola to tell him as much about herself as she was willing to tell. And they had a great conversation. It was a nice exchange. She shared with him that she was a teacher at a school just up the road from where he picked her up at the bus stop. She shared with him that she had gone to college in North Carolina in a small town called Greensboro to a nice little school called Bennett College for Women. And he laughed at that because he shared with her that he was from a small town in Georgia, but had gone to college in on a little small campus called Morehouse College for Men. And they laughed about that, and he even acknowledged that he felt like they were kindred spirits, because if you know anything about those two colleges, they are brother-sister schools. And so they were really glad to make each other's acquaintance. And they talked and they talked and they shared dreams and goals and the whole 9 yards. And before you knew it, they reached the French Quarters near her home. And she directed him on up into the driveway in the yard where he parked. And when he got there and stopped, before she could get out, Will asked her, "Nola, would you do me the honor of allowing me to take you on another date?" And Noah laughed. "Another date? Are you calling this a date?" And he kind of bashfully said, "Well, maybe this isn't a date, but I have to be honest with you. I feel as though my spirit knows you. You're very familiar to me in so many different ways." And as he said that, something unusual flashed across Nola's face. But just as quickly as it flashed across her face, it was gone. But Nola agreed. "I've enjoyed your company and I'd love to go on a date with you. Could you pick me up tomorrow at the same bus stop that you picked me up at tonight?" And so he agreed, and there was a date that was set. He let her out, she got up, he watched her walk into her home, and he drove off. And the next day, he got to the bus stop early because he couldn't wait. He was so excited that day, he could barely do his job. And so the time had come. He picked her up and like clockwork, she was there. She jumped in the car and this went on day after day. And each day they do something different. They may go for a walk in the park. Some days they went out to dinner, maybe a movie, a museum, but it continued to go on and they were getting to know each other pretty well. And one day he laughed, and in his laughter, it kind of blurted out. He didn't say, "Nola, I love you. I have this undying love for you." But what he said was, "Nola, my soul has been lurking and looking for you for the longest. Where have you been my entire life? I feel as though I've not been fully living until I've met you." And Nola knew that expression because what she hadn't told him is that she felt the same way. But instead of revealing that and sharing that, she recognized that as a sign that maybe this relationship that they were building was going to go just a step further. And she also knew that she couldn't go a step further without him until she told him some things that she needed to tell him. And so she said to Will, "Will, I have allowed you to choose every date that we've been on, every place that we've been, everything that we've done. And I have a request of you. Would you allow me to pick our dating place for tomorrow?" And he said, "What? Well, sure. Where do you want to go?" And she says, "Well, I want you to pick me up at the bus stop that you've always picked me up at. But then I want to take you on a picnic down on Basin Street." And he said, "Basin Street?" She said, "Yeah, Basin Street to the #1 cemetery." And he said, "Are you joking? Is this a joke?" She says, "No, there's some things that I want to share with you that I'm only really going to feel comfortable sharing with you at the cemetery on Basin Street." And Will thought, I'm not really one for cemeteries, but what I do know is that this woman is becoming very important to me. And she's taken me out of my shell a little bit, and I've been adventurous with her a little bit, so I'll go a step further. And so he did not really exactly agree to meet her. He just said, "Nola, I'll see you tomorrow at the bus stop." And Nola was quiet, so he couldn't really read her demeanor. He didn't know if this pleased her, if this made her sad or what. And so she got out of the car without saying a word, and she began to walk really slowly to her front door. She hadn't quite made it to the steps yet when Will looked down, wondering, why didn't I just say yes? Why did I not fully commit? And when he looked up, his intent was to look up and yell out the window, "I'll meet you at the cemetery." But he didn't do that because when he looked up, Nola was gone. And this surprised him a little bit because she was on her way to her front door, but not really close enough to get to the front door. And so he looked around, he didn't see her anywhere. The door, he didn't hear the door open, but he was tired. He had some briefs to read for his job that day, that evening. And so he just pulled the car around and drove out of the driveway and drove on home. But the next day, he was committed to meet her at the bus stop like she had asked. And he had brought some extra shoes because he didn't want to get his shoes dirty, because he was a little bit nervous about going to the cemetery on a date. That seemed kind of strange to him. But he got there early because he had to admit he did enjoy the way that Nola sashayed to the bus stop when she knew he was going to be there waiting. And so he got there early and he waited a bit and Nola didn't come. And so he waited and he waited almost an hour. And then he thought, did something happen? Could Nola be in trouble? Did something keep her? Or did she not really like the way that I answered her yesterday and has decided not to see me anymore? Well, either one of those scenarios didn't set well with Will, so he decided that he was going to go to Nola's house just to check and make sure that she was okay. So he gets to Nola's house and he parks his car, he walks up to the stairs, and just as he raises his hand to knock on the door, a woman who could be Nola's twin had her age not betrayed her. Very beautiful woman, long, silky, gray and black hair, opens the door. And this takes Will aback a bit. But he says, "Hi, my name is Will. Maybe you've heard of me. I've been dating Nola for the past couple of months, and I was supposed to meet her at the bus stop today, but she didn't show up. And so I stopped by just to see if everything was okay." The woman stood there. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't in shock. She didn't say much of anything. She simply stepped back, opened the door a little wider to make way for Will to come in. And as Will made his way into the home, the woman said, "Nola's not here. Let me go get us some tea." And before he could respond to say, "No, thank you," the woman had gone to the other room to get some tea, which left Will standing in the living room, looking around because this was his first time in Nola's home. His eyes landed on a picture frame up on a mantle. He walked over, took the picture frame down, and he looked, and he was just enamored with how beautiful she was. And around that time, he could hear the old woman coming in, and he knew that it was her, so he didn't take the time to turn around. He just said, "Nola sure is beautiful." And the old woman responded, "Yes, she was." That picture of Nola was taken 70 years ago. And the day after she took the picture, she was hit while she was standing in the rain at the bus stop that you were waiting for her for. Have a seat. Now, Will really should have been surprised, should have been shocked, maybe should have even dropped the picture frame, but he didn't. He simply put the picture frame back up on the mantle because he knew this is the part where he tells his story. Now, for all of you out there that are scary story enthusiasts, you may have heard not of Nola Williams, but of John Williams in Jasper County, Georgia in 1921. John Williams was the owner of a plantation in Jasper County, Georgia. And I did say in 1921, Some of you may be surprised because if you did halfway good in history, you know that slavery was over in 1864. Well, I said 1921. So this is where Will's story began. He sat down with the old woman and he began to tell her, I knew that my soul had been looking for Nola. I didn't know that my soul would find her here in New Orleans, but I had to come. I had to keep looking because the way that the story goes is that in 1921, I, Will, was a slave on the Williams plantation. Now, you might be asking yourself, how could I be a slave on a plantation in 1921? Well, in 1921, on this Williams plantation, it was in a rural place. And I came from a pretty big family. And my family was poor and we were looking for work. And I had just turned 20, so I left home and I was walking and I was looking for work to support my family. I had 8 siblings and my parents had almost worked their fingers to the bone. And there were lots of advertisements when I got to Jasper advertising that if I were to sign up and work on this farm, that I would receive free housing, that any feed that I needed, any animals I needed, any equipment that I needed, all would be given to me if I agreed to work the land. And at the end of the cropping season, I would then settle up, take my money, and move on to try to do something to better my situation in life. When I got to the Williams plantation, things were not what they seemed, and they certainly weren't what they should have been. There were 10 other people, making me number 11, males. We were worked day and night. If we didn't work, we were beaten. We were underfed, we were underclothed, we were mistreated, we were stolen from. But what Mr. Williams did not know is that he did know that he had a daughter, but he had a daughter. What he didn't know about his daughter is that she was in love with me and I was in love with her. And we'd done what people in love do. And before you know it, Nola was 6.5 months pregnant. And she came to me one night and she was adamant that we had to leave because if we did not leave that plantation, her father would eventually find out. Her father would kill them both. And so we agreed that we would leave. Nola had come up with this plan that we would come to New Orleans because she had read that in New Orleans, it was not uncommon for mulatto girls like Nola and Black men like me to cohabitate. And so Nola's plan was that she was going to tell her father that she was going into town to go dress shopping to prepare for the party season that was coming up. And because as an indentured person, I was not allowed to leave the plantation, Nola had written a pass for me saying that I needed to come into town to get more feed. And she was gonna leave earlier in the day and I was to come later that afternoon. Well, Nola left, and we'll put a pin in that because what Nola and Will didn't know is that John, the owner of the plantation, was stir crazy at that time. He had begun to hear and read newspaper articles about other indentured servants in and around Georgia being able to break free and tell their stories to the people up north. The people up north had heard these stories so many times that it was hard to shut it off as some crazy person's story. And so law enforcement came down to check things out, to see, and Mr. Williams had gotten word of that. And so he started to get really, really panicked. He was living his life as if he was always on edge, because you see, in the rural part of Georgia, in Jasper County, he was a mean, notorious slaveholder. But in the city, he was known as a Christian man, a wealthy businessman, a kind-hearted citizen. And he could not possibly have that reputation ruined. He didn't want his business ruined. And now he's left to try to figure out, because these people are coming and they're starting to ask questions, how am I going to save my business and save my reputation if I've got these 11 indentured servants here? I cannot risk them. And they interview them, they could tell. I can't be as mean as I normally would be, because if they run away, they could tell. And so Mr. Williams had come up with this plan. He had 3 sons that also ran surrounding farms, and he called his 3 sons together and he told them that they needed to go back to North Carolina to visit family, which is where he had moved from. And he wanted them gone for a period of 2 weeks. He had 2 overseers because he had 2 farms that he was running. One of the overseers was a Black man named Manning. The other overseer was another Black man by the name of Charlie. And he had concocted this plan with Charlie and Manning that the 3 of them were going to kill the 11 indentured servants. And because they had this appetite for meanness and violence, it was not going to be an easy thing. Which is why Mr. Williams did not notice that his daughter was 6.5 months pregnant, because he was so occupied with how he was going to get rid of these servants. So his daughter, as planned, left with the brothers who were going into town so that they could make their way to North Carolina. They took her into town, dropped her off at the store. She didn't really go to a store. She grabbed a bite to eat, and then she went to a bus stop, and she sat and waited for Will to come. Well, Will, back on the plantation, was so nervous about how he was going to get off. Even though he had a pass, he knew the brutality that could befall him if he were caught. And so he went to Mr. Williams and he said to him, you know, you've been telling me that you need this hole dug on the outskirts of the property so that you can put up some fencing. Is that something that you would like for me to do today? And Mr. Williams took that as an opportunity to separate him from the rest, and that would be a way for him to be killed. And so he told him, yes, go do that. And he sent Manning to be the overseer. And as he's digging this hole to make a fence, when he gets to the part where the hole is deep enough that Manning believes that he can bury him in, Manning takes an axe and hits him from behind on the head. He falls over into this hole. Manning covers it up. Meanwhile, Nola is sitting at the bus stop waiting. And it's gotten so late now that it's starting to get dark. It is starting to rain, and she is coming into the realization something horrible must have happened. Will would not have left me this way. But being 6.5 months pregnant, I cannot go back. I'm going to have to go to New Orleans and follow the plan that we made for ourselves, and I'll figure out a way to get Will to New Orleans after I'm there and settled. And so with this resolve, this young woman decides she's going to catch the bus. Bright lights are coming towards the bus stop. She steps out to make a signal that she is there waiting for the bus when she is hit by a car. She's rushed to the hospital, and just before she dies, they deliver her unborn child. Now, back in the living room at Nola's house, The old woman grabs Will's hand and says, "Daddy, thank you so much for continuing to seek out Mama's soul. She's been with me for the last 70 years. I've not drawn a breath in 70 years that I did not feel her close to me. But her soul is at rest now and she's gone on. And you can go on too." And Will, with tears in his eyes, looked at his daughter for the first time and said, "Thank you. Answer me this one question before I go and join your mother and be at rest. Did you ever hear tell of what happened at the Williams plantation?" And the daughter went on to say that, "Yes, when I was in that little college in North Carolina, there was a paper called the Charlotte Observer. And in that paper, one day I came across an article about the 11 murders that took place on that plantation. And what I found out is that 5 of the 11 were killed by an axe. 3 of the 11 were chained with heavy rocks around their neck and thrown into a lake to drown, but their bodies washed up, and that started the investigation. The investigation concluded with a case where John Williams, Clyde Manning, and Charlie Chisholm were all convicted. They were convicted of murder, and the strange thing is they took 11 lives. Their life was not taken. They were given life. Thank you. And so, part of that story is from a story called The Bus Stop. The other part of that story is actual facts that you can go back and check. There was a massacre in Jasper County, Georgia, where 11 slaves were killed, and they had been living as slaves. And if you've ever seen the movie Alice, which is on Netflix now, I believe, it is not a story that is a true story, but it's a story that was comprised of several true stories. In fact, there is a woman by the name of May Louise Walls who lived in servitude as a slave, not knowing that slavery had been ended until 1963, when she and her family was able to escape. And that is scary. Thank you.
I think one of the great things about storytelling and storytellers is just how different everybody's style is. And the kind of stories people choose to tell and interpret. And that's a great example, don't you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice. Thank you for that. Plus the fact that you use the word sachet. Which just pleases me to know that. I just kind of like that word, isn't that great? Not mosey. Sachet. All right, let's bring another storyteller up. We're halfway through. Would you like to stand for 1 second? Sure. Okay, have a little stand, have a little stretch, have a little movement, and then we'll sit right back down. There you go. You might need that. Certain parts of your body might appreciate a little blood flow right now. You good? All right. So let's continue with, well, kind of on a multifaceted kick here tonight, because our next storyteller is Debby Gullery. And Debbie, like storytellers before, as you heard, has all these other accomplishments aside from being a brilliant storyteller. Debbie is a relationship coach. She is the sought after speaker. She is a published author. Luckily for us, a great storyteller. She draws on oral traditions from lots of cultures and folklore and traditional tales from around the world and kind of puts them through her own unique filter to come up with her interpretations of the story she presents. Debbie likes to use themes and characters that kind of have some universal appeal that comes through, maybe has something to teach, possibly through humor about ourselves, about each other. But take note, she can also tell a wicked good, scary story. We are ready for Debby Gullery.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I can't see you at all, but I'm imagining you look great. So I'm gonna tell you a story tonight. It's an Irish ghost story called The Well. But I have a little twist. I'm going to need your help. You ready?
Yeah.
It's not too hard what I'm gonna ask you. On the other hand, if you blow it, the whole thing goes down. So what I want to do is divide you into three. Okay, so sort of figure it out. That third, and that third. Okay, figure out which side you're gonna be on. And then I'm gonna give each of you one line. You think you can do this? I know it's gonna be hard though, because it's just gonna come and then it's gonna go. Okay, so here's you ready for this, your line over here?
Yeah.
Okay, and of course you need to say, oh, I'm glad you're there. You're gonna be helpful. Okay, so what I need you to do is, say this line with oomph. Okay, so your line is, the three strange men stared at him. Can you do that?
Those three strange men.
Oh, gosh, that was amazing. All right, very good. Okay, you guys ready for your line?
Yeah.
I don't know, said the second man. Can you do that?
I don't know, said the second man.
Oh God, you guys are great. Let's try yours again.
The three strange men stare.
Excellent.
I don't know, said the second man.
And your line is, well, the traveling stranger, of course. You say that?
Well, the traveling stranger, of course. The three strange men stared at him. Well, the traveling stranger, of course.
Okay, well, let's try that one again.
Well, the traveling stranger, of course.
And
I don't know, said the second man.
excellent. You ready for the story?
Yes.
Yeah.
A young man, a traveler, was walking the back roads of Ireland when he found himself between two towns as the sun was setting. And he knew he was going to have to find some place to spend the night. Now, in those days, it was very common for people to rely on the hospitality and kindness of strangers. So the young man started to look for a cottage that had a candle in the window. That usually meant that the people who lived there were open to helping a stranger in need. So he walked and he walked, and he walked and he walked. The sun set, the sky got darker, and finally he saw a house. And he went over to the house and he knocked on the door, but in this case, he was turned away. Undeterred, he continued to walk, and now it was completely dark, and made worse by the problem was that there was clouds that night. So the moon wasn't visible, the stars weren't visible. It was getting really dark, hard to see his, one step in front of the other. And the young man was starting to get nervous. The wind was getting stronger. He's wrapping his cloak around him, trying to stay warm.
And he just kept walking until finally he saw a small cottage. There was no candle in the window, but he was desperate. So he went up to the door and he knocked. Slowly, the door was opened to him, and he was greeted by a tiny woman, bent over with age. And she looked at him. She had dark, beady eyes, and her gray hair was pulled back tight in a bun, but she had a smile on her face, and she welcomed him in. Relieved, the young man stepped into the cottage, and he looked around. There wasn't much in there. It was really tiny. There was a tiny table and chairs with a lantern on it. There was a fire in the fireplace with a little black cat curled up in front of it. And even though it was late, he could smell something delicious was cooking. And sure enough, the old woman invited him to sit down at the table, and she gave him some soup and a piece of bread to sop it up with, and he ate it hungrily. And when he was done, she showed him where he might sleep for the night in a corner of the cottage. And then she made a cup of tea for both of them, and they sat silently in front of the fireplace, watching the flames flicker and feeling the fire's warmth. After a while, the old woman turned to him and she said, "Do you have a song that you can sing to pass the time? You know, it's customary when you are housed and fed that you provide some entertainment." Well, the young man was pretty surprised by that and caught off guard completely. And he sort of stammered and said, "Well, gee, I don't know any songs actually, and I don't sing at all. I've got a terrible voice. I'm sorry." And the old woman looked a little bit disappointed. And then she said, "Well, how about a story? Do you have a story that you can tell? Or maybe you have some news from some of the towns that you've been passing through?" And again, the young man just shook his head. He said, "Well, actually, no, I don't know any stories, and I don't have any news either. I haven't talked to anybody for the last couple of days. I'm sorry, and please don't ask me to dance, because for that, I can't do that either." Well, a look passed over the old woman's face. He couldn't quite tell what it was, but clearly she wasn't happy with him. And then she said, "All right, then perhaps you can do a chore for me and, make yourself useful." And he said, "Okay, that I can do." So she said, "Well, you see that bucket over there on the floor? Take it outside and, get some water from the well. That would be helpful for me." So he said, "Of course, I'll do that." So he picked up the pail and he went out into the dark. He tied the pail to the rope and he lowered it down. He waited to hear the splash, and then he waited for it to fill up. And then he started to pull it up. And he pulled and he pulled and he pulled. And all of a sudden, it got stuck. He jiggled a little bit, and then he continued to pull with all his might. It was stuck. He couldn't get it to budge. And he really didn't want to disappoint this old woman. So he thought, all right, I'm strong, I'm young. He took the rope and he wrapped it around his wrist a little bit to get a little more leverage. And he leaned into the well a little bit farther, and he pulled with all his might. And at that exact same moment, there was a pull from the other side. And he went down, down, down into the well. And because the rope was wrapped around his wrist, he couldn't let go. So he got pulled down into the water, down, 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 until he came out on the other side and landed hard on the ground. Well, dazed, he looked around. He found himself in a strange land, somewhere he'd never been before. He looked up in the sky, and there was the well, still hanging. And there was the bucket still hanging from the well. And standing in front of him were three strange men, if you could call them men. They were really just skin and bones, and the skin on their faces was pulled tight across their cheeks. And where there should have been eyes, there was just black sockets. And in front of the three men was a large coffin on the ground. And
Well, the first man said, "Who will carry the coffin?"
I don't know, said the second man.
Yes, it must be that we'll have to ask the stranger. And so they pulled the stranger up, and the four of them took that coffin onto their shoulders and they started to run. And they ran through the meadow away from the well hanging in the sky, and they ran into a dense forest, and they ran in the dark for miles and miles. And finally they ran out of the forest into a graveyard. And when they got to the graveyard, they stopped and they put the coffin on the ground. And the young man just collapsed on the ground, tried to catch his breath. His heart was beating. He'd been running so long and so fast. And
The three strange men stared.
the first man said, "Who shall dig the grave?"
I don't know, said the second man.
Guys,
Well,
Stranger, of course.
stranger, of course. And they threw the traveling stranger a shovel and forced him to dig a grave that was 6 feet deep and 4 feet wide. Well, he was just exhausted. He finally finished and he crawled up out of the grave, collapsed on the ground that he'd been digging, and then
the three strange men stared.
and the first man said, "Who will lie in the grave?"
I don't know, said the second man.
And just as the third man said that, the young man leapt up and started to run. And he ran as fast as he could out of the graveyard and into the forest. And behind him, he could hear screams and shrieks. And he turned around and the three men were following him. And there was fire coming out of their mouths. He was running as fast as he could. He got out of the forest. He ran into the meadow. He could see that the well was still hanging there and the bucket was still hanging from the well. And he picked up speed and he ran as fast as he could. He grabbed onto the rope and he started to pull himself up. And then the rope started to swing wildly. He turned around and sure enough, those three men were climbing up after him on the rope. And smoke was coming out of their eyes and they continued to shriek and reach for him. The young man held his breath and pulled himself up through the water and jumped out of the well, soaking wet. He ran to the house and he started banging on the door as loudly as he could. "Let me in, let me in. The strange men are following me. They're going to kill me. Let me in." The door opened and there was the old woman. Only now, her gray hair was loose and flowing down to her waist, and her skin was almost translucent. And he said to her, "Please let me in. The strange men are chasing after me. I know they want to kill me." And she looked at him and she said, "Who doesn't have a story now to tell?" The young man fainted on the doorstep. He woke up in the morning and there was like rain on his face and he looked up and there was, the roof had fallen in and there were bats hanging from all of the rafters. And he looked around and all the furniture was covered in dirt and cobwebs. Clearly, nobody had lived there for many years. He looked for the old woman, but she wasn't there. He saw the bucket lying on the ground. Confused, he got up and he walked outside of the house, and there, on the side of the house, were 4 gravestones. And he read the etchings and found out that they belonged to 4 siblings, 3 brothers and a sister, all of whom had died the exact same day many, many years ago. And a chill went through his body. He had a moment of recognition and panic. He picked up his backpack and he took off, and he never turned back. And they say that he continued to walk the back roads and towns of Ireland for the rest of his life. And when he did accept the hospitality of strangers, he was never without a story to tell. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Okay. Our next storyteller is an actress, a writer, a director, an award-winning storyteller. Deborah Asante has dedicated her life to teaching and sharing the value of culture and heritage through the performing arts. In 1990, Deborah founded, you've likely heard of the Asante Children's Theater. She created that theater to offer really extraordinary theater experiences for young people, to educate them and challenge them and inspire them as artists. She's twice been awarded the Arts Council of Indianapolis's Creative Renewal Grant. And Deborah and I have worked together as storytelling buddies, partners with several programs over more than 20 years. And so I'm always really happy to introduce my friend Deborah Asante to the stage and have her come up and give us the story.
Good evening. I have enjoyed these stories. What about you?
Yeah.
Everybody's so different. Well, I done worked on something. You wanna hear it?
Yeah.
Here we go. Annie flung herself screaming out of her nightmare just as the wolf's jaws were about to tear into her again. She screamed, but did she? Because had she really screamed, Mama and Paul would have been by her side by now. So she must have screamed in the dream, but not in real life. Because in real life, she was sitting up in her bed, shivering and shuddering and silently crying, still terrified. And it felt so real. The cold, the moonlit road that was the long way home, and the stench of this man? No, more like a wolf. She had dreamed the same dream for 3 nights in a row. 3 nights she had dreamt of being chased down by what? The first night, it had been a man, a hairy man with bulging eyes and a huge mouth filled by a blood red flickering snake tongue and too many sharp teeth. The second night, the creature had been hairier, and now it had claws to match the too many sharp teeth. And it ran on 2 legs. Tonight, it had ran on 4. It was still big like a man, but fast like a wolf. It had tore at her. She remembered the stench of the creature and then the blood. Yes, there was blood. The smell of blood, she can remember. She threw back the covers to check for wounds. But that's when the aroma of her mama's homemade biscuits washed over her, and her mama's voice rang in the air. Annie, is you up yet? She felt the warmth and safety of home. She jumped out of bed and shook off her nightmare. And breakfast with Mama and Pa was perfect, too perfect. Ma passing around her hot buttered biscuits and spooning out her creamy grits while Pa hummed an old blues song while he was frying up freshly caught fish. And both of them teasing her about being sweet on Jody, whose party she was gonna attend later that day. It was just perfect. And she didn't want to spoil their happiness by sharing her nightmare. But later on, when Mama was tugging and pulling at her hair, trying to braid it up into a special do for the party, Annie, wanting to take her mind off the pain, told her Mama about the night. Mama stopped braiding and said, were you on the shortcut through the marsh? Annie laughed and said, no, I wish I was, because then I know it weren't never gonna come true, because you don't never let me walk the shortcut cut through the marsh. And the mama chuckled and said, girl, it's just a dream, child, it's just a dream. But suddenly it occurred to Annie that walking the shortcut might be the answer to all her problems. So she turned her head around and faced her mother. Mama, why? Why don't you want me to walk the shortcut through the marsh? You always say it's dangerous, but why is it dangerous? Mama lightly popped her with the comb and leaned in and held her eyes and said, you better not ever walk the shortcut through the marsh. You hear me? You hear me, Annie? You better not never ever. And she held her eyes for a little longer and then jerked her head back around and started braiding. Neither one of them said nothing after that. After her hair was done, Paul came up on Annie and said, you looking mighty pretty, but why you got your lips all poked out? Annie said, cause I'm gonna die on the long way home. Cause Mama won't let me walk the shortcut, Mama won't let me walk that shortcut through the marsh. And she told her father the whole story. Now, Paul, before he spoke, he looked around. Now, your mama don't want to speak on this. She don't like to. But she lost her baby sister a long time ago in that marsh. They found her straw hat floating on the marsh, but they never found her body. Annie scoffed. I know about Mama's sister. I ain't no little bitty child like that. I'm almost 13 years old. I know how to walk the marsh without falling in. Paul looked at her and said, well, what you don't know is that they say the spirit of your little aunt haunts the marsh now. She gasped. She a ghost, Paul? Paul leaned in and said, oh, it's worse than that. She's dead, but she calls to the living. She don't want to be in that grave all by herself. She's lonesome for her family. So she tried to lure them into the swamp with her song. You and your mama is a family, you know. Everybody else say. Annie felt sick to her stomach. He's like, I don't want to go to the party now. But Paul said, he wrapped his arms around her shoulders and he said, look here now, Annie, this is your first real party you ever going to. You got to still live. You got to still live. Just be smart. Go and come back early. Don't come out home in the dark, and your friends will walk that long way with you. They always do, don't they? She nodded her head, and that was the plan. But she had the best time ever and stayed too long at the party. By the time they started back, it was truly dark. And when she turned to go on the long way, Jimmy May, who might have been a little resentful for all the attention Jody had showered on Annie, refused to follow her. She stopped and said, why are we gonna walk that way when this way will get us home twice as fast, pointing to the shortcut? And he turned around and said, but no, please. You know, we always walk this way. Y'all always walk with me. And Jimmy May turned and sashayed. And said, not today. And the friends followed Jimmy May onto the shortcut. She stood in the moonlight for a moment, looking down at the moonlit road, and then looking at her friends, and then something familiar stirred in her nostrils, that stench. She took off after her friends on the shortcut. She was hurrying to catch up with them, but she couldn't help but notice how big and beautiful the moon was. It seemed to set a sparkling mist about the marsh. And it mesmerized her. Her steps slowed, and she was watching the sparkling mist transform into the gray, silvery image of a small girl. But where her eyes should have been were hollow holes of endless darkness. And where her mouth should have been, there was none. Yet she was singing in a raspy whisper. I know moonrise. I know starrise. Now you looking in my eyes. I walks moonlight. I walks starlight. Finally comes this night. I stretch my arms to you. The song was like her aunt's arms pulling her closer and closer. In the grave, I cannot stay, so I roam. Come to me. No longer will I be alone. That song pulled her deeper and deeper. She found herself walking straight into the marsh, and she couldn't help it. It's everything in her body wanted to be there, wanted to go deeper, deeper. And she tasted the sour muck as she began to swallow the swamp water as she walked in deeper, surrendering to dark, heavy, Suddenly, she was in pain. Somebody was pounding on her chest and calling her name. Annie, Annie. It was her Paul. But she couldn't answer him. She couldn't breathe good. She was trying to breathe. And suddenly she vomited and drenched Paul in that sour, stinky sludge she had swallowed. But it didn't matter to Paul. He pulled her up in his arms, and she passed out again. When she woke up this time, her mama was holding her and rocking her. Oh, Annie, he was almost gone. She hugged her tight. He was almost gone. I think my baby sister sent you that dream, that nightmare you told me about, just to get you to walk that way. Oh, he was almost gone, she rocked it. He was almost gone. Thank God your Paul decided to check It's a shortcut for you just in case. She wanted to cling to her mother like her mother was clinging to her, but she had no strength. She could hear her mother's voice, but it was fading. He was almost gone. He was almost gone. Then she suddenly realized that the warmth of her mother was gone. She felt cold as ice, and then she heard it. No longer will I be alone.
Jack had been in the army for 20 years and he was at the end of his term. So he got out and he was paid with 2 loaves of bread. Does that sound like pretty good pay for 20 years in the army? Maybe not, but Jack loved bread. So that's set well with him. And he put a loaf under each arm and he started to walk back to his mama's house to gift her with the bread he'd earned for those 20 years. He walked out into a great big wilderness forest of a place, came down out of the trees, out of that high ground, and came into a field with grass maybe this tall. And he's walking along, and he's just walking with that bread under his arm like so. And he looks over and he sees a human head. And he looks down and it's just, skin hold tight, just like in those previous stories. He looked a little closer and it wasn't just a head, there were also arms and legs and a torso, but I tell you, they weren't hardly any bigger than this, just skinny as can be. And as he looked down, he saw the eyes of that skull, of that head, come open like so. And a kind of a bluish, dried up tongue came out and licked the lips. And it said, Jack. Jack looked down. Was that you, Daddy? No, it wasn't his dad. But Jack called everybody Daddy. Is that you, Daddy? Yes, Jack. What's wrong with you? What happened to you? Jack, I'm starving here. Nobody will feed me. Have you got anything I could eat? Did he?
Yeah.
What do you have? Did he give him any?
No.
Yeah, yeah.
Most people say yes. How much? He gave him an entire loaf of bread. Now that old man reached up and he took that bread in his weak little hands and they were kind of shaking. And he started to eat and tears come to his eyes. He says, "Oh, thank you, Jack. Thank you so much." "Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about that." And Jack walked on with his 1 loaf of bread and he walked on into a forest until he came out the other side of that forest. There was another area with tall grass, just like before. And he looked down and I'm pretty sure you know what he saw there. Yeah, another head. And he looked down and he said, "Oh, what happened to you?" And the old man said, "Jack, I'm starving here. Have you got anything that could help me out?" Now Jack looked down at that fellow and did he have anything to give him? What did he have? Did he give him any? Yes, he did. How much did he give him? Jack poured that loaf in half, gave the old man half, he walked on. The old man was crying. Jack goes, "That's okay, don't worry about it." But he didn't go far, because he got to thinking to himself, you know what? That second man looked even worse than the first one. And I gave the first one a whole loaf of bread, and so I only gave him a half a loaf. That's not right. And Jack went back, don't you know, he gave that second man the other half of the bread. And the other half, as soon as the old man got it, I don't know how, but he just stood right up. And the rags that covered his tiny frame fell away, and there was a beautiful glowing white robe. And the man suddenly started to put on flesh, and his eyes looked clean and clear, and his beard went away, and his hair was strong and sleek, and he stood up and he was strong, and he had like a robe around him and a belt, and he said, "Jack, you helped me out when nobody else would." And Jack said, "I know." The man said, "Jack, you did something for me. You gave me something. Now I want to give you something in return." "Okay." Jack was thinking, maybe gold. But the man reached into his coat and he pulled out a nasty, ratty, holy, ugly, brown, stinking bag made of burlap. He said, "Here you go, Jack." And Jack said, "Oh, thank you. It's a nasty, holy, stinking bag made of burlap." The man said, "No, Jack, that's what it looks like. That's not what it is." "Okay, what it is?" The man said, "Well, Jack, that's a wickety whack sack." "Oh, yeah, what?" "Jack, that is a wickety whack sack." "What even is a wickety whack sack?" "Jack, there's something in this world, and you want it. And it wouldn't be stealing, and it wouldn't hurt anybody, but you can't get that thing. You open up this sack like so, clap your hands one time, and say, 'Wickety whack into my sack.' Jack, whatever it is, it'll just have to go in there, and it cannot come out again unless you say it can." And Jack said, "Oh, okay." Now he knew that man was Crazy, but he didn't say anything. He just put that sack away. And then he said, "Okay, bye-bye now." The man said, "Hold on, Jack, I got one more thing for you." And Jack said, "Oh boy, I can hardly wait." And the old man reached into his coat pocket and he pulled out a little bottle, no bigger than this. It's a glass bottle with a little cork in the top. It was empty. And Jack said, "Okay, it's a little bottle." The man said, "Jack, it just looks like a little bottle. This is a death eye glass." "Uh-huh." "What is a death eye glass?" "Jack, now if you find somebody and they're sick and ailing, and they're in their bed maybe, and they don't know if they're gonna live or they're gonna die, you take this, you fill it up with water what that person has been drinking, and you can hold this up to your face like so. Now, whenever somebody's that sick, the angel of death is in the room with them. And if you hold this bottle up with that water in there and look through it, you will see what no one else can see. You will see the angel of death. And Jack, if the angel of death is floating up the head of the bed where that person's lying, that person's gonna die. But if it's floating around down there at the foot of the bed, that person's gonna get better, maybe sooner. So here you go." Jack said, "Okay, very good." Now he knew that fellow was Crazy, but he didn't say anything about that. He just walked on. And that night it got late and he was hungry and he was tired. And he found an inn, which is kind of like, a hotel today, motel. And he knocks on the door. A man comes to the door. "Ah, Jack, what do you want?" "I would like a room and something to eat." "Uh-huh. You got money?" "No, I had 2 loaves of bread and I gave them away." "Well, that's nice for you, Jack, but you got no money. I got nothing for you. Move on down the road." And he shut the door. Jack went walking down the road till he ended up way out in the middle of the forest. It was late at night. It was pretty dark. And so he lay down under a tree. It was kind of uncomfortable to lay there on the ground. He took that bag up and set it on the ground, put it on his head for a pillow. And up above it, he starts hearing some kind of noise, and it was like a kind of a. If I had a veterinarian up here on stage with me, he would really do that sound justice. What do you think it was? And so Jack looked up, and in the half light, he could see it on a branch, maybe 20 feet up in the air, just right above him. First branch on the tree. There they were in a line, 9 turkeys gobbling away. And Jack thought, "Oh, I love turkey. I wish I had a turkey to eat because I love turkey." But they're 20 feet up, and that's the first branch, and there's no way until Jack realized, wait a minute. And he picked up that bag and he thought to himself, "Well, I hope nobody's watching." There was no one there except this entire audience. And so Jack opened up the bag and he clapped his hand and he said,
What do we got? In the mindset.
whatever turkey said, I don't really know. 9 of them, he walks back to that inn, knocks on the door. Jack, I thought I told you to move on down the road. I have 9 turkeys in a bag. Jack, I've got a huge crowd of people here tonight and I don't have enough to feed them. Give me those turkeys and you can have whatever you need, Jack. Oh, not so fast. I want one whole turkey for my own self that you will cook for me and I will eat. Okay, Jack, give me the other turkeys. Not so fast. I want a really nice room. All right, Jack, I can move somebody around and give you a nice room. Not so fast. I want one of those beds where you put the little quarter in and it gives you the magic finger massage underneath your back like this. He says, okay, Jack, I can get you that. Not so fast. I want one more thing. What do you want? I want a good paper to read in the morning. This was back a long time ago when we were actually paper. Okay, Jack, I can get you the Indianapolis Star. No, I want the New York Times. All right, Jack, it'll be on stretch, but I'll get it. So Jack had a nice night, nice meal, had the nice little cozy magic fingers on his back, and he got up the next day to leave. He says, can I have my bag back now? Oh, that old thing, Jack, I threw that out in the garbage. To get that bag for me, I want that bag. So the man went out, fetched the bag, brought it back. Jack went walking down the road again, so he's walking along, and don't you think that whatever Jack wanted, if it wasn't stealing, it didn't hurt anybody, don't you think he could get pretty much anything he wanted with that bag? No.
No.
No, because Jack had it in his mind that what he really wanted, most of all in this world, was a beautiful, he could see it. You close his eyes, he could just see it like he was looking at a picture or a film, it was a 2-story wood frame, white clapboard siding farmhouse with a big oak tree in front, a limb going out, a rope hanging down to a tire swing, a garden oak. He could just see the whole thing. And so you can't put that in a bag, right?
Right.
The other thing he wanted was he wanted a girlfriend. But he thought it would be starting off on the wrong foot if he found a girl that he really liked to have her sucked into a bag. It just seemed wrong. And so Jack went around and had lots and lots of adventures until one day he comes up to the rise of a hill and he looks over and he sees a farmer, seemingly a farmer. Farmer's leaning on a fence like this out in front of the exact house that Jack always sees in his visions. And Jack says to him, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, Jack? Yeah, I'm not doing great. No, not really." "Why, what's wrong?" "Well, it's that house." "Is that your house?" "Yeah, that's my house. I would like that house." "Jack, I can't give it to you, buy it from me, sell it to you. I can't do any of that." And Jack said, "How come you can't do that?" Farmer says, "Well, Jack, because I really don't even like to talk about it. Why don't we just part company, Jack?" "No, how come? Why not?" "Well, Jack, that house has been taken over." "What do you mean taken over?" "Occupied. People like you and I can't go in there without risking our lives." "Well, who took it over?" "I don't want to tell you." "Is it ghosts?" "No, it's worse than ghosts." "Is it demons?" "It's worse than demons, Jack." "What's worse than ghosts and demons?" I don't want to say it too loud, but it's purple bogies. Purple bogies? What even is a purple bogey? Jack, they're nasty little creatures. There's 3 of them. They're about this big tall, they're about not so high. They got no hair on their body, Jack. They're purple all over, kind of an ugly color of purple. They've got recurved yellow rotting teeth that stick out their mouth at different angles. They got ears that come up to a point, stick off the sides of their heads. Jack, they've got claws coming out from their hands. Jack, all of them got a slit down the middle of their back when they get mad. Out come these leathery wings with claws on the end, long tails with a hook on the back of the thing, Jack. Anybody that tries to go in there and do what you're thinking you're gonna do, get rid of them. I come back the next day, buddy, there is nothing left of them but their feet in their shoes. Because they don't like shoes. I got a whole graveyard behind this house, just nothing but feet and shoes. I will get rid of them for you. No, Jack, you just move along. I will do it. No, because I will do it. I'm telling you, I will do it, but I will do it. I was very persistent. So the farmer said, all right, Jack, but you have to give me a few things so I can do it. What do you need? A deck of cards, a frying pan, a dozen eggs, a little bit of butter, something to start a fire with, and some firewood. What are you gonna do with that? Never mind, just bring all those things to me and then come back tomorrow. So he gets all those things, the farmer leaves, Jack starts a fire at the fireplace, he gets the fire going, puts the skillet in there, melts the butter, cracks the eggs, he's got his cards going, he's playing the game where it's just you playing, solitaire, and he's frying those eggs. When he hears it from the chimney. Jack just keeps frying the eggs and playing solitaire. And then 3 pairs of little recurved hooked toes and feet fall into the fire. You would think those things would burn up and sizzle and crack, and nope. Those feet, they come dancing out into the room. And they're just dancing around. Jack, he just plays solitaire like this is something you see every day. Then he hears, coming down. 3 sets of legs land in the fire. It's hard for legs without feet to move, but and those legs are coming out into the living room. And they roll and roll and they suction themselves onto the feet. The feet stand right up. And they're dancing and dancing, and Jack just keeps playing cards. Like this is just normal and natural, and then I'm coming down. 3 butts. I know what you're thinking. How's the butt gonna move? It's kind of like this. Where's the video camera when you really need one? So, the legs kind of bend over and there's that suction again, and up come the legs with the feet and the butts, dancing around, dancing around, and Jack's just playing solitaire. When he hears down from the torsos with the arms, they walk out into the living room, and they get closer to those legs, and they bend down and they're suctioned on. Now you got the whole creature right there, everything except the heads. And then Jack's playing cards when he hears for the last time, all together now. Down. Each of those bodies walks over, bends down, picks up one of those ugly heads. And they open up their mouths, and drool and slobber, kind of a brown and black color, comes rolling down their chests. They pick up their swords. They've got swords, nasty recurved swords. The wings, those leathery wigs, and they fly up into the air, and they're flying around Jack, and they're swinging their swords, and then their horrible voices, they say, "We won't eat you, Jack. We won't eat you." Jack says, "Okay, that's fine. But just wait, just hold on a minute. I'm playing a card game, all right? You can hear what we said. We're gonna eat you." Pretty damn scary, right? Jeff says, "Okay, I get it. I'm just trying to finish my card game. Will you let me finish my card game?" "What's cards?" You don't know what cards is? We don't know cards. What is cards? Okay, come here. And they land. And Jack tells them about cards. Oh, it's fun. We want to play cards too. We want to play cards too. Jack said, well, this is just a game for one person. It's called solitaire. Alone. I'll teach you a different game. Jack taught them poker. How long had been, Jack? How long had been in the army? You don't spend 20 years in the army without learning how to be an ace poker player. So Jack taught them a poker game. It was called strip poker. What is it? Jack said, well, if I win, you have to take something off that you're wearing and give it to me. But if you win, I'll take off something I'm wearing and give it to you. Let's play. And they played. Now, Jack had not only learned to play poker, he had learned to cheat. He was so good, you didn't know you were even being cheated. And so they played poker and wonder who won. It's not funny. It's not fair. I know, but I won, so take something off. So they started by taking off their little pink blousey shirts they had. We want our shirts back. You can get your shirt back, but you have to win in the card game. Let's play again. And they played again, and who won? Yeah. Why did he win? So they took off their pants. And then he won their belts, he won their swords, he won their little sockies that they wore. He won pretty much everything they had except their little tight purple underwear. Yeah, we don't like poker so much. We want our clothes back. Well, you gotta win your clothes back. Okay. Yeah, don't have much left to bet with. That's okay, let's play. Who won? Yeah. Why? She's me. Jack, this is not funny. Now we're naked and we're cold and we want our clothes back. Jack said, well, you have to have something to bet. We don't have anything, said one of the little purple bogies. But the other one said, we got the treasure. Shut up. There was treasure in the basement of that house. Chest after chest after chest filled with gold and pearls and silver and diamonds and other gemstones. And Jack said, did you say jewels? Bring me and let me see. So they went down, they brought up these treasure chests and they opened them up. And Jack said, oh, that'll do. How about this? Let's play, and if I win, I'll just take all the treasure. But if you win, I'll give you everything back and you can eat me. Okay, that's fair. They played, who won? Why do you win? You know it. And so he took that, they're out of everything. But they were so angry, they ran over, grabbed their swords, flew up into the air, said, we don't care if you won, Jack. We're gonna eat you right now. And they was closing in on Jack, swinging those swords back and forth, coming closer and closer. He backed him up to the wall, and Jack said, get away, get away. And then he remembered he had something that might come in handy. And he opened up that bag, he clapped his hands, and he said, wickety whack, into my thighs. There they were. And there they remain till that farmer comes back the next morning. He goes, Jack, I guess I don't need my shovel to bury your shoes after all. No, you don't. Here's what you do for me. Take this bag. It's tied at the top. Walk it down to the village, give it to the blacksmith, have him pound on it all day long with his anvil and his hammer, and don't have him stop no matter what he sees come out of the bag or what he hears come out of the bag. And they did that all day long. First there were shrieks and there was kind of blue smoke. And after a while there was purple smoke. And then there was just purple dust. And when they brought that bag back to Jack, there was nothing left in there. That purple dust. And wherever he scattered that dust when it came out of the bag, Jack could grow a garden wherever that was. That just, it was like magic the way things grew there. And Jack lived there pretty happy. And don't you think he was happy then? No, he didn't have a girlfriend. Now, word got around that Jack was living there, and one day a farmer came over and told Jack he had a he had an animal, a farm animal, was having trouble delivering his cow. And he thought maybe that cow was gonna die. The Jack know anything, says, no, I know a veterinarian, but he's in the audience right now. But Jack went over and he said, you know, I can't help your animal, but I can at least tell you, will it live or will it die? Would you want to know that? Fellow says, yeah, I suppose so. Oh, go out of the room for a minute. Jack filled up some water that the cow had been given, and he looked through there, and sure enough, there was the angel of death floating above that cow. But it was at the far end of the cow, and Jack said, come on back in, your cow's gonna get better. And it did. But you know how people are. First, that farmer told somebody that Jack was able to tell him the cow would get better, and it did. And that got passed around. It was like the game we all played, telephone, right, or telegraph. And after a while, it was said that Jack couldn't just tell you you're gonna get better or not, Jack could make you get better. And everybody and his brother was asking for Jack. And Jack would always tell him, I can't make somebody get better, but I can tell you, will they get better or not? Would you wanna know? Could be a hard thing to hear. That went on for a while till one day, up comes a horse. Soldiers astride the horse. He gets off, knocks on Jack's door. Jack, come with me. The king needs to see you right now. Off they go to the castle. They get to the castle. Jack's taken to the king. Hi, king. What's up? Well, Jack is my daughter, the princess. Those doctors we have here, royal doctors, they're quacks. I don't know. Nothing they do. I don't think she's going to get. Maybe she's going to die. Jack, I've heard you can save someone. No, I can't save someone. But I could tell you, will she get better and live or not? Would you want to know that? Well, I suppose, Jack. Let me take you to her quarters. They go in there. He opens the door. There she is, Jack. She's lying over there in her bed, face to the wall. Would you give it a try, Jack? Okay. First of all, is she drinking from that cup with that pitcher of water? Yes. Okay, I need a little bit of that water, and then I need you to leave the room. What do you need me to leave the room for? Because the way I find out this is something I gotta do by myself. All right, Jack, but don't be long. Okay. So Jack goes over. He fills up the little death eye glass with the water. You remember the little death eye glass? And he goes to hold it up. Before he does, the princess, tossing and turning, fevered, rolls over in her bed to face Jack from a distance, eyes still closed. Jack, knocked unconscious, down onto the floor. And why? She was cute. Jack liked that girl. He thought, I finally found the woman I want to marry. Oh boy. Then he realized, but maybe she's going to die. Do I want to know? I don't have to know. And he held up the death eyeglass and he looked through it. And Jack saw what you and I, nobody else could see. There was the angel of death floating above that little girl. Was she at the foot of the bed? Or was she the angel of death at the head of the bed? Was at the head of the bed, which meant she's gonna die. And Jack was crushed. Here he found this person he'd been looking for all his life, it seemed. And then he happened to look one more time, and he noticed something. The angel of death seems to be napping. Well, even the Grim Reaper needs a little shut-eye now and then. And Jack thought, I got an idea. And he went over to that bed. And now, where was the angel of death? That girl sat up in bed, took a breath, eyes opened wide, locked right onto Jack's eyes. And she said, oh, Jackie. And she jumped up out of bed. The king heard his little girl's feet pitter patter across the floor, comes running in. Jack, you've done it. you saved my girl. Jack said, I know. But the angel of death was awake now, and he was not happy. And he pulled out that scythe that we always see that the Grim Reaper has, and he starts closing in on Jack. And Jack, he's backing up like this. He picks up a little poker from the fire, going, get away, get away. Nobody else could see this. Jack's going, stay there, stay there. Jack, are you talking to us? No, it's just kind of like a little exercise I do sometimes. Just stay back. And the angel of death could speak and talk to Jack, and he could hear it. And the angel of death said, I will take you. And just as he was closing in on Jack, and Jack's back was to the wall, Jack pulled out that little bag, and he opened it up, and he clapped his hand, and he said,
Wickedy whack.
and there went the angel of death into the bag. They tied up that bag. Jack, of course, he called in one of the king's little page boys and said, go take this out to that tall, tall sycamore tree, climb to the top, tie it up there, and never go up there again. And the little boy did that. And not so long after that, Jack and that princess, they were married. Jack just didn't realize how much he would love being married. He loved that girl. And then they had children. And Jack found out he loved being a father. And then they had grandchildren. And then they had great-grandchildren. And great-great-grandchildren. Great-great-great-grandchildren. Great-great-great-great-great-grand. I don't know how many greats, but it was a lot. One day, finally, Jack thought to himself, I have been with my children and great-grandchildren and I don't know how many, but for a long time, it's just so much fun to be with them. But I'm gonna go for a walk. And been out in who knows how long. He walked out the castle, he's walking down the road, and he sees this thing coming towards him down the road. And what in the world could it be? He didn't know. It was all kind of bent over, hunched over. There's some long thing sticking out the front of it, plowing up a furrow in the ground. It's all covered with long, greasy, stringy hair, just like what hung off that wart and in the other story. And so he gets close to it, and he looks down and he can't make it out. He says, what are you? And the creature reached out a bony bunch of fingers and went, I'm a woman, Jack. Jack said, well, I've never seen a woman like you before. How come you look like this? 'Cause I'm old, Jack. I'm old. Well, how old are you? I'm 416 years old, Jack. That's so old. What's that feel like? It's terrible. Everything hurts all over all the time. It's just awful. Well, how did you get like this? I got like this because I can't die. How come you can't die? Well, they say some idiot has death tied up in a bag somewhere. Reckon who was that idiot? Then Jack realized this is against the natural order of things. He went back to the castle. He found one of those little page boys and sent him out back, had him bring that bag back, sent him away, got in the room by himself, untied the bag, and out pops Death, hopping mad. And they say Jack was the first one he took, but in a radius of many, many miles, horses and tree leaves, butterflies, earthworms, anything at all that was living and should have died a long time ago, with relief, just fell down to the ground right there. That's what they say. But I've seen that Jack showed up in other stories after this one. I think what happened was this. Death jumped out and says, now I got you, Jack. And Jack said, hold on a minute. Let's play poker. Thank you very much. Well, so, that's one of the classic stories from the volume by Richard Chase called The Jack Tales. Lots of stories about Jack in there. Let's have a stand up, folks, over here. Let's have another round of applause for all of our storytellers. What final stories to share tonight? Thank you all for being here. Drive home safe. We'll see you next time. Good night.
Yeah.